Hello and welcome to our daily sketching routine. It is Wednesday, March 5th, 2025, and today's topic, I'm going to call it Sketching Made Easier. And I wanted to call it Sketching Made Easy, but sometimes not always easy, so I'll just say Sketching Made Easier, because there's definitely ways to making it easier. But before we begin, welcome back if you're returning, and welcome if you're new to the channel. I sketch and post every day, and I use a timer to stay focused and to build a habit. So yeah, sketching made easier. So I'll link to yesterday's video where I started this blank page, and yesterday's video is a good example of how to make sketching easier. And just to get warmed up, I'll do the same kind of thing where I just pull up some random images on Pinterest because the feed is random. So that's part of the easy part of it. And I had the thought of how you could have like a list of prompts, but to me, even that is too difficult sometimes. But like, don't zoom in because then you'll see details. And so keep it zoomed out as like a thumbnail. With that in mind, I'm going to just get warmed up. So I worked on this after yesterday, and you'll notice, I added this part. I changed this figure, added more detail, and I'll kind of talk about that. That's part of making it easier. I'll zoom in also. So part of making it easier has to do with learning like how to construct, which is basically like saying how to draw. I mean, it's part of it. And so that's what I'm doing here. But the idea is just coming from like a Pinterest like thumbnail that I can see. So this is just to get warmed up. So that's one way to get sketching, like make it easier for yourself. And I'm specifically calling it sketching because that's the other thing that makes it easy, is that it's a sketch. So you don't have to feel like you have to do like a finished piece. The idea is that sketching is, I think it's a great thing in and of itself, personally. And I look at it as like the same way I look at journaling, where like I keep a journal, so it's the same thing. And I'll do a video where I kind of talk about that actually. So this is one way, just to get warmed up. So then you don't have to think about the subject matter. Now, of course, the way I'm drawing it is kind of its own thing. For me, this is kind of like, it's easier for me to do it this way. Well, it's easier for me since I know I can do this. I don't have to think about the subject. So that's what's making it easy for me. And then I can just look at the textures and stuff, and just kind of make up the rendering. So yeah, I just want to get started with that. And then the other thing is, since it is a sketch, like that can work. And since this is basically a sketch, like they look okay. Let me zoom back out. So that's another thing, is if it's a sketch. So in yesterday's video, I sketched this out and then I sort of made it kind of like world building. So now there's like a theme or like a motif to it. And then once you kind of have this much, then it's easier to add detail. So for example, just by looking at it, I can see where like I can add details to the sketch. So once you have something, then it's easier to kind of go back in and just add some detail to things. Along the same lines as the idea of working on it for like a certain amount of time, like using a timer, such as like right now I'm using a timer. And basically anytime I sit down to sketch, I will either use a timer to count down or use a timer to like just keep track of how much time has elapsed. And that sort of, it makes it easier for me because it is sort for whatever reason. So that's one thing, is once you have this, you can kind of go in and detail it. The other thing is, on this figure, you'll notice in yesterday's video, it looked kind of different. It's sort of like that. Going over something, like redrawing it, makes sketching easier. That could depend on things like right here, I could just keep it as like black and white, like pen and ink kind of thing. But let's say I don't like the drawing or like the sketch, then there's always go in with some markers, go in with some like white paint. So don't be afraid to fix things and adjust things, because ultimately if you mess up, you can just paint over it. That's one thing that I've learned. So that makes it easier, is basically allowing yourself to like redraw something. And then the other thing is get a pencil. That makes things easier. So now that we've gotten this far, so on these, I was just like looking off of stuff from Pinterest, for example. But then once you get like a composition and a theme going, like right here, I saw some illuminated manuscripts, and so I just added that, which is sort of a collage. Doesn't really, it kind of goes with this, like the same theme, but like it doesn't really make sense. With that said, you can kind of just start composing things that just seem interesting. And I'm doing it in pencil so that I can, so that I can erase. That's the other thing that would make it easier too, is to erase. So sometimes for me, it's actually easier to just go in like with marker or ink or something. Or sometimes it's easier to do pencil. So yeah, I try to be like pretty loose if I use pencil. But let's say you want it to be more tight with the pencils. So over here, I'll go back to this. Now, once an initial idea gets started, and like maybe that's all I'm going to sketch, then later on, what can happen is, instead of looking at the initial sort of reference or idea, I can see something like this, and either I'll just start to ink. Like, I'm not going to look at anything. I'm just going to sort of go off of what I can remember. So that's one way to get better at drawing things from imagination, is basically just using your memory more often. So there's that. If I'm not like 100% sure, if I'm just making something up, I'm not too worried about just inking it, like, or just drawing it in ink. But the more I have to design something, the more likely I'll use a pencil. If I have to, let's say, give this, let's say like, let's have him sitting on a horse, which in the picture, I don't really see the horse. Seahorse? So I'm going to make up some stuff. And that's kind of what I mean. Like, unless I'm going to ink it very sketchily, like, then yeah. But like, if I don't want to have like a ton of like sketch lines, I'll do it this way. It's whatever works. Sometimes this is the preferred way of doing it. So one reason I wanted to do this was to kind of show like how to ink a little bit more, because this one is a little bit more spontaneous, kind of just inking without any pencil lines. But here, one, you can pencil it and then give yourself some room to go back and do research and find reference for it, or like redesign it, so that you can just kind of put down like what you remember. That's also another good way to practice drawing from imagination, is just to, and also practice like constructing the figure and stuff. But like with the horse, like I don't really know, like I'm just gonna sketch it in, maybe like this. So that's another way to make it easier, is just to use construction and like a pencil and everything. The other thing, I guess, is kind of how I like to do these collages. That's another way to make sketching easier, is so that one, I don't have to worry so much about like what I'm drawing, and then the other thing is it allows me to like experiment and practice, but like experiment with different techniques and stuff. The other thing, of course, is the daily sketching routine itself, which for me is actually that helps, makes it easier. Is then I don't have to worry about the one, memory works kind of like that, where it's repetition, but then the other thing is like the hand-eye coordination kind of works like that. I think that should help as far as just making sketching easier and to like sit down and start sketching things. And then the other thing is like the look of it. So for example, I had this marker sitting around, and so so part of it's like the color, or it could be black and white. I'm gonna work on this some more. I don't know if I'll do another video on this page, maybe, but I want to thank you for joining me for our daily sketching routine. And if you like these videos, please support the channel, and until next time, keep on sketching.